I walked through the wrought iron gates of my sister's Charleston estate and felt a familiar tug of unease, like a lion circling back into its own cage. My name is Ariel Vaughn, and today I was supposed to celebrate turning 35. Instead I sensed something else, an invisible charge in the air, as if someone else was expecting the party to be more than a celebration. Veronica Hale greeted me with a practiced smile. "So glad you came home, Ariel. We've missed you," she said, glass in hand. Her tone was warm but too smooth, as though well rehearsed. My feet felt heavier than usual. Small talk followed. Martin Hale, her husband, angled next to me, offered me champagne. His hand lingered just a moment too long around the glass. I noted it. I recognized the tilt of the wrist, that subtle tilting motion I learned about in biochemistry labs in college. "Here," Martin said softly. "To family." I raised the glass, forced a smile. I thought of the chemistry experiments I once ran, compounds you didn't expect to change, but did. I caught the reflection of the silver spoon beside the cake, the rippling surface of my drink as though something twisted beneath the crease. My heart decided in that slice of a second. I swapped my glass with Helen's, the one closest to me, without alerting anyone. Clara, my niece, filmed in the background, entirely unaware of what she held. Helen clinked her glass with mine, laughter trailing her. The bubbles in mine fizzed harmlessly. The ones in hers carried a fate I pretended not to see. The party lights glittered, music rose. A toast was offered, to new beginnings. Veronica cried, and everyone cheered. I stayed quiet. I pressed my lips to my glass and restored the original one to its spot, empty. Less than 10 minutes later, Helen stumbled, grabbed her throat, eyes rolling. Glass shattered on patterned tile. Gasps erupted. Veronica lunged at Helen, pushing people back. Martin froze, then played concern, too late. I sat back, watched them in motion, memorized faces stained by shock. The camera in Clara's phone rattled. Evelyn Vaughn screamed for someone, anyone, to call 911. Outside in the garden, I leaned against a marble column and breathed deep. Stars pinpricked the sky. My mind traveled back to a darker birthday when Veronica whispered, "Some people are born extra, not essential." I tasted the memory, salt, disappointment, resolve. Clara found me, hugging me tight, whispering, "Daddy was weird today." She didn't know what she caught, but I did. The phone in her hand still recorded. Tonight the lion awakened. I walked back into the house as sirens filled the air. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I let the night hold the weight. Because they underestimated the wrong woman. I woke up to murmurs drifting down the hallway, like an orchestra tuning before a performance no one wanted to attend. My head felt clear, too clear. The kind of clear that means danger's just around the corner. I glanced at the clock, 7:46 a.m. The Charleston sunlight was already crawling across the wallpaper. Something was off. I reached for my phone. Dead. I know I charged it. I remember plugging it in. I dropped to my knees, searching behind the nightstand for the cord. Dust, a stray hairpin. Then a click under my palm. A small, square black device. I froze. A camera. It wasn't hidden well enough for professionals. It was personal. Someone wanted to see me, unguarded, alone, in this room. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could hear my own breath catch. Then a knock. "Aunt Ariel?" Clara's voice floated in. I shoved the camera back behind the dresser. "Come in," I said, forcing the words past my clenched throat. She peeked inside. "You okay?" Yeah. Just tired. Long night. Clara smiled. Mom's telling guests Helen choked on a shrimp. I think she's lying. I nodded, said nothing. My heart beat like a metronome in my chest. Clara left. I stared at the corner where the camera sat, still blinking faintly. Was this room ever meant to be mine, or was it always a stage? I stepped onto the patio for air. Morning dew clung to the stone. I logged into my email using the guest Wi-Fi. The first message read, "Your contract has been terminated effective immediately." Subject line, "Final notice." My job. Gone. No warning. I called the office, got rerouted to HR. A clipped voice answered. You've been red flagged due to irregular behavior reported by a close family member. Who? I asked. I'm not at liberty. It was Veronica, I snapped. Wasn't it? A beat of silence. We've said all we can. Goodbye, Ms. Vaughn. Click. I stared at the screen. Then I turned and walked back inside, face blank, eyes dry. Veronica wanted me isolated. I just hadn't realized how far she'd already gone. By afternoon, I drove downtown to my bank. A young teller waved me to the private desk. We had a notarized wire transfer 2 days ago. It emptied your savings account. What? Authorized by Veronica Hale. She handed me the document. My signature, only it wasn't mine. Not quite. The slope was wrong. The Ian Vaughn looped too high. This is forgery, I said. She frowned. We'll investigate, but the form was notarized. Notarized. That meant help. Someone inside. I didn't lose everything today. I just finally saw what was already gone. That evening, I stepped around the back kitchen entrance, searching for a moment of quiet away from the guests still lingering in the parlor. That's when I heard a soft voice. Ms. Vaughn? I turned. A young man in catering black stood with a nervous smile. His name tag said Miles. This ended up somewhere it shouldn't, he said, holding out a small USB drive. Thought you should have it. What is it? I was clearing trays near the AV room. Caught some footage someone left playing. He shifted on his feet. You helped me pass chem in 10th grade. Figured you should know. I took the drive. Thank you. He nodded once, then disappeared into the kitchen. I returned to the garden, sat on the cold stone bench, and plugged the USB into my laptop. One of the files showed the drink table. The angle was wide, grainy, but clear enough. Martin. Leaning over the champagne. Pocketing something. It wasn't just a hunch now. I had proof. If evil watches you from the shadows sometimes, truth watches back. That night, I sat on the edge of the guest bed, facing the blinking red eye of the camera. My voice low, I said, You want a show? Watch this. I pulled a small leather notebook from my suitcase. Page 1, Veronica, bank. Martin, champagne. HR, termination. Clara, ally? I unlocked the folder on my phone labeled exit plan. It hadn't been touched in 4 years. But I knew what came next. I wrote one line across the next page, if they want me to fall, they'll have to watch me rise first. The wail of sirens cut through the night air like a warning light flashing red. I followed the parade of family cars out to the driveway where paramedics were tucking Helen onto a stretcher. Veronica's voice trembled even as she directed the scene. Stay with her, she ordered Martin, and he nodded, his usual poise rippling like water under pressure. I tried to walk forward, let me ride along. I called, but Martin stepped in, voice low, family only, Ariel. He blocked me with his bulk and a false smile. I froze. I watched his hand, shaking as he lit a cigarette. A tell. Guilt masking itself in routine. The estate, once loud with laughter, slunk into silence. I stepped back inside, scanning the shattered glass from last night's celebration, champagne and secrets strewn across the tile. My reflection broke into pieces. I let it stay like that. By early morning, a visitor arrived. Dr. Howard Lehman, suave, sympathetic, lethal. Veronica handed him my arm like I was a keepsake on display. We just want to make sure you're okay, she said. His first words, you've been under stress, haven't you, Ariel? His tone was too kind. Too precise. I suppressed the memory of the HR dossier, unstable, that listed his name. I nodded slowly. Maybe I should rest, I whispered. Veronica's smirk said she believed it. Later, unable to sleep, I drifted into the hallway and froze at the murmur behind the closed oak door. Veronica's voice, it has to look natural. She's fragile already. Douglas muttered, just don't leave evidence this time. The phrase hit like a scythe. This time. I recorded it with my phone, heart pounding but hands steady. A door creaked. Martin's footsteps near. I ducked behind a curtain and held my breath. When the halls were empty, I returned to the safety of my room and whispered, you'll all regret speaking so loud. At 2:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. An encrypted message from Clara, don't trust them. I have something. Attached, a clip of Martin pouring something into that champagne glass, timestamp visible. My heart didn't jolt. It sank into cold clarity. I saved the file to a hidden USB and deleted the message. I didn't want anything digital to trace. I typed, Cole Merritt and sent out a query. By late morning, sunlight leaked through the blinds in narrow gold stripes across the Hale Estate Library. The air smelled like polished wood and burnt nerves. I sat at the long mahogany table, listening to Cole Merritt's voice on speakerphone. Calm. Precise. Everything I wasn't feeling. Ariel, he said, you've been under sustained manipulation, financial, social, digital. What they've done could constitute undue influence under South Carolina law. I took a deep breath. Define undue influence. He paused, maybe surprised I wasn't crying. It's when someone uses trust, authority, or dependency to control another person's decisions. Veronica appeared at the doorway like she'd been waiting for her cue. Coffee? Her tone had the sugar of poison. I smiled faintly. Black. Thank you. She left the door cracked open, always listening. Cole continued, you'll need hard proof, not suspicion. Emails. Recordings. Financial discrepancies. I have all three, I said evenly. He went silent for a beat. Then we can work with that. At that moment, Clara stepped in, clutching her sketchbook. Aunt Ariel, she whispered. Look what I drew last night. She laid the page on the corner of the table before Veronica could reappear, two hands passing a glass, a dark eye in the ceiling above them. I looked up at her, nodded once. It's beautiful, I said softly. But what I meant was, I see it. When the call ended, I told Cole, okay. I'm in. My voice sounded calm, but my pulse had already declared war. Around noon, I slipped toward the side entrance. Miles, the catering staffer who'd given me the first USB, was waiting in the shadow of the delivery gate. "You shouldn't be here," I said. He grinned nervously. "Neither should you." He held up a small flash drive. Kitchen cam _2025. My stomach tightened. "What's on it?" "Everything from last night. And earlier." Some guy in a dark suit handing Martin an envelope near the buffet. I felt my chest go cold. "Thank you," I said. He swallowed. "Just don't get caught." I gave a half smile. "That's why I'm quiet now." We shared a brief hug. I could feel how his hands trembled. "You're doing the right thing," I whispered. "So are you," he said, before hurrying off. As he disappeared, I whispered to the empty hallway, "We're rewriting the story." Evening came. Clara knocked again. She looked pale, eyes darting. "Can I show you something?" I let her in. She laid another drawing on the bedspread, this one more detailed. 2 glasses. One spilling. Above them, the same square outline I'd noticed before, a camera. "Where's this from?" I asked quietly. "The library," she said. "I couldn't sleep. I felt like I was watching you." I studied the drawing. The perspective was uncanny. She'd drawn it from above. From the same angle a camera would see. I locked the door, thanked her, and slid the drawing into my notebook. Then I opened the second USB. Footage from the kitchen matched her sketch, same angle, same hidden lens. "They thought their secrets were invisible," I murmured. "I just found the lens." At 3 o'clock, Veronica summoned me to the office. "Dr. Lehman's waiting," she said, the corners of her mouth twitching. When I entered, the doctor looked pleased with himself. Douglas and Evelyn stood behind him like pale ghosts of approval. Lehman smiled. "You look calmer today, Ariel. Acceptance suits you." I met his gaze. "I see you found something too." He tilted his head. "What's that supposed to mean?" I set my folder on the table. "Only the right person sees." Veronica's face flushed. Douglas turned away, pretending interest in the curtains. They slid a few forms toward me. "Just routine," Lehman said. I picked up the pen, scrawled my name, but on the wrong line, the one that nullified consent. I handed it back with a serene smile. "Thank you," Veronica said, suspiciously sweet. As I stood, she asked, "You feeling better, dear?" "Better than you think." I walked out of that room lighter, calmer, deadlier. Because in my bag lay Clara's sketch, the USB, and a plan sharper than any of them imagined. When they thought I was lost in the shuffle, I was already rewriting the game. Dinner smelled like civility, burnt at the edges. Veronica sat at the head of the table, her pearls gleaming like teeth. I slid into my seat, smiling faintly, a portrait of composure. Inside, every muscle hummed like wire. "To family," Veronica said, raising her glass. "To strength and understanding." I clinked my glass lightly. "To both." I let my shoulders sag, my eyelids droop. "I'm sorry, I've just been so tired lately," I murmured, tracing the rim of my glass. The words came out fragile. Perfect bait. Martin leaned closer. "Don't push yourself, Ariel." His voice tried to sound kind, but it wavered, like someone balancing a lie too long. I smiled, soft and small. "I'll manage." Under the table, my thumb pressed the record button on the tiny device taped to the wood. No one noticed. My eyes stayed on the amethyst chandelier above us, light scattering across crystal shards like a chemistry experiment. I'd once studied molecular reactions. Now I was watching human ones. The conversation blurred into meaningless niceties. I caught snippets: money, reputation, Helen's condition. Veronica's laugh rang false. Martin's eyes never met mine. Have you ever pretended to be weaker than you were, just to see who'd strike first? When the plates were cleared, I stood. I'll grab coffee, I said. My tone casual, almost shy. The kitchen was quiet except for the tick of the clock. Veronica stood at the counter, stirring sauce, her back to me. The hidden camera light blinked faintly behind the spice rack. I kept my voice low. Need help? She's startled. Oh, no, dear. Go rest. Her hand brushed the inside of her jacket pocket, where a glint caught the light. A vial. Clear liquid. She slipped it back smoothly, too smoothly. I stepped closer, pretending to peer into the pan. Smells wonderful. Old family recipe, she said, smiling. But her hand hovered above the ladle longer than needed. I memorized every motion, the pocket, the angle, the tremor. My pulse stayed calm even as the air thickened with realization. I'll tell everyone dessert's coming, I said and walked away, slow, steady. How far would you go to gather proof, and how close would you let the threat get to you? Later, in my room, I slipped the footage from my recorder into Cole's encrypted folder. I labeled it kitchencam_2145. My breath slowed as I watched it once, Veronica's elegant hand unscrewing the cap, tipping something invisible into the pot, then stirring like nothing happened. At 10:45 p.m., Douglas passed me in the hallway. He glanced at my laptop screen and froze. His voice cracked. What is that? Dinner, I said simply. He swallowed hard. You. I saw. He said nothing else. Just turned and walked away. Maybe for the first time, he was afraid. A few minutes later, Veronica walked in without knocking. I quickly closed the screen, feigning a yawn. Just reading. Her eyes darted toward my desk, her mouth tight. You always were a night owl. I smiled. And you always were consistent. For a moment, our gazes locked. Then she turned and left. I reopened the file, pressed save, and encrypted it. You can't stop what you don't see, I whispered, the phrase like steel in my throat. The estate grew quiet. I sat back on my bed, the silence stretching thin. I texted Clara, stay safe, don't draw tonight. Her reply came instantly, why? I stared at the blinking cursor, then locked my phone. Some truths didn't need to be typed. I glanced at the small camera under my desk, its green light pulsing softly. They thought I was broken, I whispered. They were wrong. Tomorrow, I'd pass the footage to Cole. And when he had it, the game would finally change. I made my way to the formal sitting room at the Hale estate, the one with the high back chairs and the silent glare of family friends waiting like jury members. Veronica greeted me with fluid charm. Ariel, thank you for coming, she said. We believe it's time you rested and let the adult conversations take over this household. Her tone was soft, but the room felt tight. Martin's jaw clenched. Douglas stood near the windows, arms crossed. The lawyer's table sat between us, papers stacked, pens ready. I settled into a seat, my nerves steady but alert. I noticed the little panel on the wall that I had secretly wired, microphone active. I asked quietly, what exactly do you mean by rest? Veronica's practiced smile flickered. I sat back and counted the seconds, 5, 6, 7. I knew I wasn't out of the woods. Veronica took the floor. This meeting is to discuss a guardianship transfer, she announced. Given recent stress on Ariel's part, I raised a hand. I'd like to review everything you cite, I said with calm conviction. A hush fell. Douglas's hand shook as he lifted his glass. The lawyer cleared his throat. I leaned forward. And I'm happy to wait until I have full disclosure. Veronica's face changed. Then, the hidden mic picked up Martin's voice, soft, panicked. She's got the footage. We're done. Clara stood in the doorway, eyes wide. I pressed a button, the audio played. The lawyer froze. Listeners gasped. My chest locked, but my voice was steady. Would someone like to explain this? The proof echoed in the room. The lawyer blinked, Veronica gasped, Martin stood. Everything shifted. I reached into my pocket and placed Clara's drawing of two hands passing a drink and a camera above it on the table. This meeting ends now, I said, voice clear. I'll call my lawyer. I'll call the press. You chose your path. Veronica lunged, you'll destroy the family. I looked her in the eye. You destroyed it long ago. With one composed step, I stood and exited the room. Flashbulbs popped as police escorts entered, agents served papers. The game had changed. Outside in the courtyard under the South Carolina sun, Clara pulled me aside and hugged me. We did it, she whispered. I looked up. The sky was wide and quiet. I checked my phone, assets frozen. You're safe, one message read. I allowed myself a small nod. The mission was done, phase 1. But inside, they thought they were rewriting my story. I reprinted it on my terms. Victory was quiet. Strong. Controlled. The rain tapped lightly against the window, each drop a reminder that the world outside kept moving while I sat surrounded by files, each one a testament to past betrayals and looming threats. 3 deliberate knocks at the door cut through the quiet. My hand went instinctively to the pepper spray tucked in my desk drawer. No one knew this address except Cole. My pulse quickened, but my mind stayed sharp. I opened the door slowly, and there she stood, Lydia Vaughn. Gray hair perfectly framing her face, eyes sharp and familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. I'm your aunt, she said simply. Your mother never told you the truth. Her words landed like stones in my stomach. I stepped back, letting her enter. She left a trail of rain on my hardwood floor, carrying a single envelope sealed with wax. The tension in the room was immediate, palpable, as if the air itself had thickened. We sat across from each other, the envelope between us like a fragile promise. Lydia's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a letter from Evelyn Vaughn, dated over 20 years ago, confessing that I was the product of her husband's affair. I read the words, disbelief and betrayal coiling tightly inside me. The truth I had long suspected was finally undeniable. I was not her biological child. A chill ran down my spine. Lydia explained how she had been forced to leave when she discovered the truth, Veronica manipulating the situation to protect the family's image. My mind raced, replaying the fragments of my life, the favoritism, the microaggressions, the subtle undermining. So that's why I was never enough? I whispered. She nodded. Because you were the living proof of her shame. The realization cut deeper than any insult or slight Veronica could have dealt. I paced the room, connecting every past event to the hidden motive. Lydia reminded me of overheard conversations years ago, Douglas arranging hush money with Martin, ensuring the financial trail was controlled, the poisonings, the small manipulations, they were not isolated incidents but a continuous pattern to erase inconvenient truths. I understood now, Veronica's hatred had been strategic, not personal. Her fear wasn't of me breaking, it was that I might uncover the secret. I whispered, more to myself than to her, they didn't try to break me because I was weak, they did it because I was proof. Then Lydia reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. We end this cycle. Together. She handed me a USB drive, heavy with old bank records, property deeds linking Martin and Douglas, the skeletons of decades of deceit. For the first time, I felt clarity, not fear, but the cold, precise focus of someone ready to act. We began mapping the next steps, a meeting with Cole, consolidation of evidence, and the strategy to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Lydia's faint smile cut through the tension. You look just like her. But stronger, she said. As I held the USB close, the shadows of the past felt less oppressive. The storm outside mirrored the one inside me, yet there was a bittersweet relief in knowing I was no longer alone in this fight. The game was no longer theirs to dictate. I had allies, I had evidence, and for the first time, I had a measure of control. When one secret falls, another stands ready to strike back, and this time, it's Veronica's turn. I sank into the guest lounge sofa, phone in hand, scrolling through the notifications that seemed to multiply by the second. Von Hale scandal breaks, alleged family poisoning exposed, each headline a hammer against the walls of my past. Tessa Quinn's article went live, embedding my USB footage, Clara's drawing, and a summarized version of Lydia's letter. Every detail meticulously compiled, every betrayal laid bare. Inside the estate, chaos brewed. Veronica paced the hallways, heels clicking against polished wood, phone pressed tight to her ear. Martin stared blankly at the screen, trying to contain the damage, while Douglas and Evelyn lingered silently, their faces pale with disbelief. I leaned back, a small, calm smile curling across my lips. They had underestimated me, thinking fear would keep me hidden. They didn't see the device that had recorded everything, the proof that would not be ignored. When Veronica hastily called a press conference, the room filled with lights, cameras, and old family friends, all expecting me to crumble. Instead, I walked in mid-conference, Cole Merritt at my side, papers in hand boldly labeled unauthorized evidence. The flash of cameras punctuated my arrival, and I felt the power shift with each step. I'm here to clear my name and protect the truth, I said, my voice steady, measured, yet carrying the weight of decades of hidden manipulation. A reporter, eyes wide, shouted, "Did you film your own family, Ms. Vaughn?" I didn't flinch. They filmed their own legacy, on my terms, I replied. The collective intake of breath from the room was almost audible, a wave rolling through the gathered crowd. I watched Veronica's face, flushed with fury and disbelief, while Martin stiffened beside her. Douglas's mouth opened as if to protest, but no words emerged. My pulse remained even, my mind racing with strategic calculations and the thrill of public vindication. Later, the family's fracture became evident. Veronica burst into the estate hallway, her threat sharp, "You'll regret this." I observed quietly, noting the tremor in her hands, the faltering mask of control. Martin pulled Douglas aside, his voice low but urgent, "We need a new story now." Douglas shook his head, voice cracking, "I loved her like a daughter." The cracks of the family facade were now undeniable. Lydia texted me, "My home is no longer safe." Clara's message followed, "Is she coming after us now?" I replied simply, "Let her try." Standing in the driveway, watching media vans retreat, I felt the freedom of the war moving out of the living room and into the world beyond the estate walls. As evening settled over Charleston, I sat alone in the estate guest room, waves crashing against the bay window below. The soft gray dusk mirrored the quiet triumph in my chest. I recalled a phrase that had stuck with me: your silence is their weapon, make your voice their downfall. Whispering it aloud, I felt its resonance deepen. My phone buzzed, a message from Cole, terse and decisive, assets frozen. Next move, law enforcement will serve search warrants at Hale residence. I tapped back a single word: good. Clara's drawing, Lydia's letter, my own meticulous records, they weren't just evidence. They were anchors to a new reality, proof that I wasn't a pawn to be manipulated but a strategist in a game long in motion. For the first time, I understood the tide had turned, and it was my current now. The public had witnessed the family's facade crumble, and I had harnessed that chaos into control power. They unleashed the mob. I was about to unleash the verdict. I stepped into the Hale estate boardroom, the morning light catching the gleam of glass walls where press cameras already angled and eager for the showdown. Veronica sat poised at the head of the table, perfect posture masking the tremor I knew ran beneath. Martin's phone buzzed incessantly, each vibration a reminder of his mounting panic, while Douglas avoided meeting my gaze, the weight of anticipation written in his stiff shoulders. I carried an envelope marked Final Transfer and placed it deliberately in front of Veronica. "This is your last chance," I said evenly. Her blush spread across her cheeks as the room tightened around us, the silence humming with the energy of unspoken truths. "You thought I'd fade away, so I moved the game board," I added, calm and deliberate. The flash of cameras punctuated my words. Veronica's eyes widened slightly, realizing too late that her audience was no longer just her family. The room, once thick with controlled civility, now crackled with the tension of exposure. I could feel every micro-expression, every shift in posture, mapping the fragile structure of their power. Veronica snapped, "You're still in my house because I allow it." Her voice was sharp, but it carried the weight of personal betrayal as well. I met her gaze steadily. "You just proved you never saw me as your sister." The boardroom fell silent, breaths held as Martin's fists clenched under the table and Douglas shuffled uncomfortably before sinking back into his chair. I pressed play on my laptop, and the footage rolled, the camera capturing Martin handing the brown envelope to Veronica, Veronica slipping pills into Helen's dinner. Gasps echoed through the room. Veronica's composure crumbled, her hand trembled as she reached for a glass of water. The confrontation reached its peak when Cole Merritt's voice came through on speakerphone. "Assets for the Hale Trust are now under Ariel Vaughn control via an irrevocable trust effective today." The words hit like thunder. Martin's face drained of color. Douglas sputtered, "You'll regret this." I answered quietly, coldly, "The regret starts when you go to jail." Clara stepped in with Lydia at her side. She leaned close, whispering, "Thank you for trusting me." I only smiled. I already knew she'd hold her part. I surveyed the room of shattered alliances. Those who had orchestrated my past pain now faced the consequences of their own choices. The architects of manipulation now saw the blueprint of their downfall displayed in stark relief. I felt the quiet triumph of strategic dominance settle over me. Press cameras clicked, but I barely noticed. The moment was mine. Later, evening wrapped Charleston in soft amber light as I returned to my small rented apartment overlooking the harbor. The hallway behind me, lined with memories of confrontation, manipulation, and cunning, felt like a distant past. I pulled out a framed photo of my younger self, graduation day, hopeful and unguarded. I whispered, "Their ambition cost me happiness. Now I'll build on mine." My phone buzzed with a message from Cole's assistant, "Case closed, for now." I pressed delete, leaned back, letting the quiet calm settle over me. I wrote a note to Clara, "You witnessed truth. Keep your light on." The blinds closed with a gentle click, leaving only the distant shimmer of Charleston Harbor to keep me company. The judge's gavel may have dropped elsewhere, but in my mind, the board had been set, and the next phase was already in motion. I parked in front of my modest new home in suburban Charleston, sunlight brushing the roof in soft gold. No gates, no cameras, no expectation to perform. Just walls I could claim as my own. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and whispered, "This is my home, not their stage." For the first time in months, the air felt mine to breathe. The garden outside was untamed, soil waiting for hands willing to shape it. I knelt by a patch of earth, feeling its cool weight against my palms. Maya Angelou's words echoed in my mind, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated." Every scar from the Hale estate pressed against that thought, reminding me of endurance, strategy, and survival. Clara appeared with a tray of lemonade, soft and steady as always. I asked her gently, "What do you want this place to be?" She smiled, "Safe. Honest." I nodded. Safety begins when truth is planted, I thought. In the living room, I sorted through old letters and Clara's sketches, Lydia's envelope now worn at the edges. Each page carried memory and revelation, scars and seeds intertwined. I dialed Veronica's lawyer and left a calm, firm message, "The guardianship ends next month." "I've moved on." "Have you?" My mind drifted to years of silent exclusion, moments of being a guest in my own bloodline, and the weight of inherited betrayal. I poured iced tea, watching twilight settle over the harbor. A quiet clarity began to rise. "Closing one door doesn't mean forgetting the key," I murmured aloud. Outside, I planted a young dogwood tree with Clara at my side, Lydia observing from across the fence. I explained to Clara, "This tree will shed something every autumn, but come spring, it'll return stronger." She nodded solemnly, understanding the metaphor even without words. I journaled beneath the slowly fading sun, sketching ideas for a non-profit to help those silenced and controlled. A small envelope slid under the door, a check from Cole's office. I held it, folded neatly, and whispered, "From the ashes of a family fire." Evening deepened. I hung Clara's framed drawing of the glass on the wall, a reminder of what we'd endured and uncovered. "We keep this as a reminder, but not a burden," I said softly. Lydia brought tea and joined us on the porch steps. We spoke of lineage not defined by blood, but by choice and action. "We are chosen," she said, and I felt the weight of truth and of kinship redefined. I gazed toward the harbor, murmuring, "They thought the silence would bury me. Instead, I'm growing louder in the quiet." Streetlights flickered as night fell. I closed the blinds but left the garden door cracked open. The tree should breathe air. So should I.